At my father's retirement speech, he said, "My son gets the business." My daughter, a job at a fast food place, if she's lucky. My brother, Sam, sneered, "She'd screw that up, too." The whole room got quiet when the lawyer cleared his throat. 3 years after we buried our mom, I was watching my father, Mark, bury me, not in dirt, but in public shame that he called a family joke. The retirement party was supposed to make Sam the new leader of Sterling Enterprises. Nobody told me it would also be my public downfall, with everyone I knew watching. The big hotel ballroom was full of talk about business reports and new markets. Fancy lights shined on faces I'd known since I was a child. Uncle Bob, who used to sneak me candy. Mrs. Williams from accounting, who always remembered my birthday. Even my old friend Lisa was there. Dad stood at the stage, his gray hair perfect. His smile showed the confidence of a man who built something from nothing. Behind him, a slideshow showed pictures of Sterling Enterprises over the years. 42 years, Dad said, his voice loud. 42 years of hard work, sweat, and way too much coffee. The crowd laughed. I forced a smile that I hoped looked real. He told stories about the early days, sleeping in the office and missing family dinners. The audience listened closely. This was Mark Sterling at his best, the storyteller who could make any room feel like home. Then came the part about the future. "Now, I know you're all wondering what's next for Sterling Enterprises," he said. The room went silent. "Well, I'm proud to say my son, Sam, will be taking over right now." The applause was like thunder. Sam stood up, his chest puffed out like a proud bird. He waved to the crowd like he had just won an award. "Sam has the vision and the drive to take this company into the next century," Dad continued, resting his hand on Sam's shoulder. I couldn't be more confident in him. I clapped with everyone else, my hands starting to hurt from the forced cheer. My friend Lisa saw me and gave me a sad smile. She knew what was coming. Dad looked around the room, then at me. "Some of you might be wondering about my daughter, Natalie." A few people looked my way. I felt my face get hot. "Well, Natalie has always done her own thing. She has other interests, other talents." He paused, a joke forming in his eyes. "She's always been more of a fast food worker, if she can just show up on time." The laughter started small and grew loud. Someone near the bar laughed so hard they hit their knee. My face was burning, but I kept my fake smile on. I had learned to do this over years of being ignored or made fun of at family gatherings. Inside, something cracked. Not broke, but cracked, like ice on a pond in spring, creating tiny lines that spread until the whole thing gives way. Sam stood up again, his drink in his hand. His fake smile was so wide. "You know what, Dad?" he said. "Let's toast to new beginnings." He raised his glass. "To Dad, the man who built this empire I now get to run." The crowd agreed with a low sound. "And let's wish Natalie good luck on her next fast food adventure. Maybe this time she'll finish the training." The laughter was even louder this time. Someone even started a slow clap. I watched Lisa's face fall. Across the room, John Peterson, our family lawyer, sat still. His face was impossible to read behind his glasses. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping on the floor. The sound cut through the laughter. For a moment, the room was quiet, waiting for me to say something back, to fight, to play their game. Instead, I picked up my champagne glass and raised it. "To family," I said, my voice strong and clear. I took a sip, put the glass down, and sat back down. The applause came back, and the party went on. But something had changed in that moment of silence. John was still watching me, tapping his fingers on his glass. At the main table, one chair was empty, Mom's seat, with white flowers on it. The flowers were fresh, their petals still closed, waiting for the right time to bloom. Everyone at the party thought her voice was gone forever, buried with her 3 years ago. They had no idea how wrong they were. I smoothed my dress again and reached for my drink. The glass was half full, with bubbles rising to the top, each one carrying a secret from deep inside. The drive home took 15 minutes, but the silence in my car made it feel like forever. I parked at my small apartment building. 3 years ago, I didn't think I would be living here. When Mom got sick, I left my life in the city without a second thought. My job and apartment could wait. Family was more important, I thought. I moved back into my old room with its faded walls. "You don't have to do this," Mom whispered during a treatment. "But I did," I said. She was my mom, and she was dying. Dad seemed more worried about business than the woman who stood beside him for 38 years. I was ready to break the silence that had followed me for years. The venue was a beautiful place on a hill. Ava's name was in gold letters on the sign, followed by Liam's in a slightly smaller size, which told me everything I needed to know about them. I arrived on time. I walked in, and a hostess handed me a drink and said, "Welcome." Her voice was polite, and I could tell she didn't know who I was. Perfect. Inside, the place was full of people with perfect smiles. I stayed near the back, watching how everyone gathered around Ava. She looked beautiful. But beauty and a good heart don't always go together. I saw our parents across the room. My dad's hair was grayer, but he had the same quiet look he always had. My mom was smiling, wearing a necklace I had sent her years ago, a gift she never thanked me for. She saw me, paused, and smiled with a polite confusion, then turned back to her friends. Not a word. I sat in a corner, hidden by a big flower arrangement. It was better this way. Then Ava found me. "Look who made it," she said, her voice full of fake warmth. "I wasn't sure you'd come. Didn't think this kind of party was your thing." "It usually isn't," I replied, matching her smile with my own. She looked at my dress with a raised eyebrow. "Black, huh? A bold choice." Sarcastic. I didn't bother to explain that black was what I wore when I wanted to be taken seriously. "I figured someone needed to balance the colors," I said instead. She laughed loudly. "Classic Claire, always so intense." She walked away before I could answer. Liam came to my table later. He looked like a politician, tall and smooth. "Claire, right?" he asked. "Ava's sister?" I nodded. "That's me." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She doesn't talk about you much. I wasn't sure if you two were close." I tilted my head. "We're sisters." He laughed, unsure what to do with that. "She said you do something with the law." I met his gaze. "Something like that." There was a little interest in his eyes, but it went away. He asked no more questions. Dinner ended, and people started giving speeches. Ava's friends got up one by one, giving toasts full of childhood stories. Ava loved the attention, her laughter floating through the room like she was used to being adored. I stayed at the back, hidden by the flowers. I wasn't there to be seen. They made it easy. Then Ava stood up. The lights on her dress shined brightly. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, smiling. "I know this may be a shock, but I wasn't always this perfect." Liam smiled, leaning back in his chair. "In fact," Ava went on, "growing up, I was the wild one. My sister, Claire, was the opposite. She was, let's just say, very strict, very serious. She once got mad because I borrowed her sweater without asking." Laughter filled the room. Laughter filled the room. I didn't move, my face showing nothing. "She's always been that way," Ava said, waving her hand. "Judgmental, stiff. Honestly, I'm just glad she showed up tonight. She's not big on family gatherings or, smiling." She looked right at me, then winked. Liam nudged her. "Be nice," he said with a grin. He turned to me, still smiling. "But seriously," he added, "we're lucky she made time. I mean, Ava said you work in, what was it? County records?" I tilted my head slightly, not speaking. "Or maybe an admin job," he added. "Either way, it sounds like important paperwork." There it was. The insult wasn't mean. It was worse. It was small. A small lie, spoken so easily it didn't even hurt. It just made things clear. Ava looked pleased. Her smile stretched wide, assuming I would, as always, be quiet. The next day, I got there early. I chose a quiet corner, I ordered coffee I didn't want, and watched as John's car pulled up. He looked older. His clothes seemed a little messy, his briefcase a bit scuffed. He walked over to me slowly, like he was carrying something heavy. "Natalie," he said, sliding into the seat. His hands were shaking as he put his briefcase on the table. "Thank you for coming. You sounded serious on the phone. Is everything okay with Dad's will?" John's laugh was short and bitter. "Your father's will is the last of my worries right now." He opened his briefcase and took out a manila envelope, sealed with red wax. "This was updated 6 months before your mother passed away. She made me promise on my children's lives that I wouldn't open it until—" He paused, looking at me, "until you were ready to hear what she had to say." The envelope felt heavy when he pushed it across the table. My name was written on it in Mom's handwriting. "She didn't tell Mark or Sam about this," John whispered. "She told me to keep it from them until I had spoken with you." I stared at the red wax seal. Mom's first letter pressed into it. What is it? "Open it." My fingers slipped under the seal, breaking it. Inside were 3 sheets of paper and a smaller sealed envelope for John only. The letter was dated a year and a half before Mom's death. "My dearest Natalie," it began. "If you are reading this, it means the time has come for you to know the truth about our family, the company, and the choices I made to protect your future." I held the letter against my chest, feeling her touch one last time. The noise of the cafe faded as I read on. "I have watched your father and brother ignore you for years. I felt helpless watching them treat you like you didn't matter. I should have stood up for you more when you were younger. I should have demanded they see how smart and capable you are. I should have protected you better from their unkindness. But I was a woman of my time, raised to keep the peace instead of fighting for what was right. I thought if I stayed quiet and supportive, they would eventually see your worth on their own. I was wrong, and for that, I am so sorry." My eyes filled with tears. I put the letter down. "There's more," John said. "Keep reading." "But being quiet doesn't mean you are without power," the letter continued. "While they ignored my opinions and didn't see my work, I was building something they never knew about. Every share I bought, every investment I made was not just for the family, but for you. The company they think belongs to your father and brother? Nearly 60% of it has been mine for the past 15 years. I looked at John. "Is this legal?" I asked. "Completely. Your mother was very careful. Everything was documented. Everything was legally done." He slid the smaller envelope to me. But that's not all. Inside the second envelope was a will from 6 months before Mom's death. "This document was signed and filed with the county," John said. "She left everything to you. The house, the money, the business shares. You now own most of the company." The words swam on the page. I read them again and again until I understood. "But the will we read after the funeral was replaced by this one," John finished. "Your mother wanted me to wait until you were ready. She also left detailed instructions about how she wanted this information shared with the family." I folded the will and put it back in the envelope. The cafe around me was full of people living their normal lives, not knowing my world had just changed forever. For the next 3 weeks, I carried Mom's letter with me everywhere. I read it during my lunch break, before bed, in my car. I memorized every word, every phrase that showed her years of quiet planning and strong love for me. Some nights, I wanted to burn it. The secret felt too heavy. The knowledge that she had suffered in silence while building this safe place for me was hard to take. Other nights, I wanted to frame it. But mostly, I realized Mom hadn't given me revenge. She had given me justice. And justice, she had written in the last paragraph, deserves an audience. I called John on a Thursday night. "Excited. I want to wait until Dad's retirement party," I told him. "Let them make their speeches. Let them celebrate what they think they have. Let them have their moment." "Are you sure about the timing?" he asked. I thought about Sam's big moment, about Dad's proud smile, about 3 years of being treated like I didn't matter. I'm sure, I said. We'll read her final words out loud in front of everyone who matters to them. It's going to change everything. That's exactly what she wanted, he replied. The retirement party was in a quiet moment. Dessert plates were being cleared and people were talking softly. Sam's cruel toast was still in my mind as I watched him work the room. Dad stood next to the cake, his face full of pride, completely unaware of the storm that was coming. I looked at John across the room. He was standing near the back wall, his briefcase at his feet, his body stiff with waiting. We had practiced this moment in his office, going over every possible reaction. But sitting there, watching my family enjoy their moment of glory, I felt my strength get a little weak for a second. Lisa was laughing at something her husband said. Uncle Bob was talking business with a bank president. Mrs. Williams was showing pictures of her new grandchild. These people had known me my whole life. In 30 minutes, they would never look at me the same way again. John cleared his throat and stood up. It was a small move, but everyone started to notice him. The talk began to get quieter as he walked to the front of the room. His steps echoed on the marble floor. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud. "Before we end this wonderful evening, I have one last thing to talk about." The room didn't go completely silent right away. Some people still talked, thinking he would say a normal lawyer thing. But those closer to the front started to be quiet, sensing something in his voice that didn't fit the happy mood. Dad looked confused but happy. He probably thought John was going to say something nice about Sam. Dad gestured for people to listen. "As many of you know," John continued, "I've been the Sterling family's lawyer for over 20 years. In that time, I've handled many things, including the will for Mark and his late wife, Elena." A few people nodded. This seems normal. "However," John paused, reaching into his briefcase, "there is a matter that needs attention. A second will." The words hung in the air. I watched the confusion on people's faces. Someone laughed, thinking it was a joke. Dad's smile faded. "John, what are you talking about?" he said. "Elena Sterling made a second will 6 months before her death," John said, pulling out the paper I knew so well. "This will replaces all other documents and was properly witnessed and filed." "That's not possible," Dad said, his voice a little louder. "The official will was signed in front of me. Elena split everything between Sam and Natalie, with the business going to me to run." "I have that will," John replied calmly. "However, this document is dated 6 months later and is Elena's final wish." Sam had stopped talking to the mayor's wife. His face was white. He was already thinking about what this meant. "That's impossible," Sam said, his voice carrying across the now silent room. "Mom never said anything about changing her will. Dad, tell him this is a joke." But Dad wasn't saying anything. He was staring at John like he was watching something bad happen slowly. John opened the document, his glasses catching the light. "The last will of Elena Marie Sterling, signed on March 15th, 2021. His voice sounded like a judge. "I, Elena Marie Sterling, being of sound mind and body, hereby take away all previous wills and state this to be my final will." The room was so quiet, you could hear the ice machine in the kitchen. "To my daughter, Natalie Marie Sterling," John continued, "I leave all of my property, money, and business interests." He paused, looking at the stunned faces. "This includes all shares in Sterling Enterprises, which is 62% of the company."